Big Les's League, an all rugby league experience. Hello, welcome back to Big Les's League, an all rugby league experience. Make sure if you're watching this on the YouTube to go ahead and click the subscribe button below. We are growing fast and furious here at Big Les's League on the YouTube, so make sure you become a part of the community straight away. Click the subscribe button, go ahead and follow the Instagram as well. All of the socials will be in the description below, but without further ado, let's get straight into it. Jeremy Marshall-King re-signs with the Dolphins until 2028. It's a big signing for the Dolphins. Obviously, look at the Dolphins moving into the future. They are developing quite well. I mean, in their second year, they're already in the top four, which is just so unprecedented, especially from myself, but from other NRL experts as well. Wayne Bennett's side, Wayne Bennett working miracles over there. But it is big news for South Sydney as well. If you went and watched the Rumour podcast about Damien Cook, which we posted the other day, if you haven't watched that yet, make sure to go ahead and watch that as well. But Jeremy Marshall-King was rumoured to go ahead and follow Wayne Bennett off to South Sydney if Damien Cook was to go to the Dragons. But with Jeremy Marshall-King re-signing with the Dolphins long-term, it does put South Sydney in a bit of an awkward position because by the time Wayne Bennett gets into the building, if Damien Cook does go to the Dragons, which looks to be all but confirmed, Peter Mamouzelos, the development of him is going to have to be fast-tracked a little bit. Is Peter Mamouzelos ready to take on that role yet? For me, not yet. I feel like he is still a year off from taking that role. He is, I think, 25, 26, Peter Mamouzelos, so he is getting into his mid-20s, but plenty of time still in the game for him to get that opportunity. I just feel like he is a year off. So do they go out and recruit some other guys? I'm not too sure. In terms of backups and 14s as well, it is going to become quite interesting. If Damien Cook does leave, is Havili going to be the backup hooker? Does Havili go into more of a forward role and they get someone else to play that backup hooker role? I mean, the hookers off contract at the end of the year at the moment, according to Zero Tackle, are Jaden Beryl, Gordon Chan Kumatong, who's a South Sydney junior. That'd be interesting to see him sign. Zach Docker-Clay at the Sydney Roosters at the moment playing lock and hooker. You've got Jake Granville. Obviously, I think he'll re-sign with the Cowboys or retire. Jamie Humphries, he has got so much talent, can play in the halves, fullback, hooker, can play a ton of positions. And then Zach Wolford, who's only just getting his opportunity this year now for the Canberra Raiders in jersey number 14. Do they go out and sign one of those guys to play a bit of a 14 role? Does Peter Mamouzelos develop into an 80-minute hooker? We'll have to wait and see. But with Jeremy Marshall-King re-signing with the Dolphins long-term, it does put that plan of him joining Wayne Bennett in South Sydney next season under a little bit of jeopardy. And obviously, if Damien Cook does leave, as we said, it does cause a little bit of strife and it does fast-track the development of Peter Mamouzelos. So, yeah, obviously, then with Damien Cook, if he does leave and we don't get Jeremy Marshall-King, which obviously we won't get Jeremy Marshall-King now, South Sydney, they do have a bit of money in the cap to spend with Damien Cook leaving. I think Damien Cook was on around 650. So who do they go out and sign? Well, let's go through some options. Obviously, for me, I think the priority for South Sydney is front rowers. I think that they do need to get at least one or two of those. Front rowers off contract reportedly, according to Zero Tackle at the end of the year, include Matt Croker from the Knights, Peter Hollart from Canberra, obviously still playing New South Wales Cup. Definitely a very possible signing there, obviously to come and fast-track his development a little bit, get a spot in jersey number 17. He's been killing it in New South Wales Cup at the moment. Liam Knight, a return would be very interesting. Matt Lodge, I believe he has re-signed with Manly. Not too sure, but I believe he has. Makahisi Makatoa from the Parramatta Eels. He's good for them. Just a solid goer there coming off the bench. Shakai Mitchell, we'll definitely have to re-sign him quick smart if that's true, and he's off contract. Who else is here? Ofeki Ogden from the Parramatta Eels as well as in this list. Tavita Pangai Jr. has only signed the one-year deal, so he's off contract at the end of the season. I believe so, or maybe he did sign. I'll have to get the details up for that one too, the Davida Pangai Jr. signing, but I believe he might have actually signed on for next year. Not too sure. Let's go on to Dolphins news. Pull that up now. Dolphins news. Dolphins team list, round 15. How long ago is this news for Tavita Pangai Jr.? Don't think it was that long ago. Anyway, we'll find that in a second. as I look through the Dolphins website now. Tevita Pangai Jr., here we go. Joins the Dolphins, 28, well, just the rest of the 24 season with the 28-year-old transfer across from QRL Cup. Yeah, it's just until the end of the year. So Tevita Pangai Jr., that would be an interesting one for South Sydney under Wayne Bennett, following him over there to Red Hill. I've heard a few rumours about Tevita Pangai Jr. doing that as well. So that would be an interesting one. A guy that hasn't really had his shot in first grade at the moment is Chris Patolo. That would be an interesting one as well for him to come over from the Bulldogs. Aaron Penne, I'm hearing that, I'm not sure what I'm hearing about him, to be honest. Obviously hasn't had his shot since coming back from the Warriors. Martin Tapau, I think, will stay in Brisbane. I think that Zane Tenavano, I don't know if he'll be playing first grade very soon. Maybe he does take that opportunity to go to South Sydney. Jared Wallace and Aaron Woods. Aaron Woods would be retiring, I think, at the end of the year. I think I've heard a lot of rumors that he will be retiring at the end of the year, Aaron Woods. But yeah, those are some of the front rowers off contract, or all of the front rowers really off contract. That's who South Sydney can go after in terms of guys for the future. Another thing I think South Sydney need is some depth in the fullback role and also in the halves. Some halves to think about that are off contract at the end of this year include 5'8" Adam Doueihi. Adam Doueihi returning to South Sydney would be interesting. He's just very injury prone. I just don't think that South Sydney would do it. Kieran Foran, I think, is going to remain at the Titans. Tyson Gamble would be an interesting one, depending on what happens with the halves pairing. If they keep Cogger and Hastings, if they get Ilias as well, maybe Gamble gets offloaded to another club. I'd love to see him over at South Sydney. Such a competitor. Would be a great replacement for Cody over the next few years. Milford, I doubt it. It was supposed to come to South Sydney, but I think backflipped. Hayes Perham, great, talented player, more of a centre fullback, but he's listed as a 5'8" here on zero tackle. Josh Schuster, I've heard rumours that he'll be meeting with the Gold Coast Titans. And Paul Turner, more of a centre back rower for me than a half, but obviously some good depth and a good utility that can play in a number of positions there. Again, another guy that's quite injury prone. In terms of halfbacks, you've got Jake Clifford, who I think will re-sign with the Cowboys. You have got Dean Hawkins, obviously off contract at the end of the year. I think we'd have to work on re-signing him. Jesse Marschke, I'm hearing he's going to the Dolphins, obviously in a trade deal for Sean O'Sullivan. Cody Nikorima, I think, will re-sign with the Dolphins. Who else is here? Toby Sexton, I think, is going to re-sign with the Dogs. I think he'll be their long-term 7. Chad Townsend, I think, will re-sign with the Cowboys. Brandon Wakeham is at Manly at the moment, but obviously he's got dramas off field as well. And Tom Weaver from the Titans, if he's not included in the starting halves pairing soon, I think that he could make a move, and I'd love to see him as depth here for South Sydney. Great player. I've loved watching him, in his spurts in first grade for the Titans. I mean, he debuted against the Panthers or Melbourne. I think he debuted against Melbourne and then played against the Panthers the following week, and he had an absolute blinder in both of those games. So, real competitor, really, really positive signs coming from him out of the trials, and every time he's had an opportunity in first grade, he's looked quite good as well. So, Tom Weaver, I'd love to see. Tyson Gamble, Tom Weaver, probably my favourites out of this list. But yeah, I think that depth in the halves, depth at fullback as well. David Armstrong's just signed with the Super League. Obviously, was supposed to go to the Roosters, re-signed with the Knights, then backflipped on the Knights to go to the Super League. Bailey Hodgson, currently at Manly at the moment, obviously didn't have the best crack at Newcastle, but has looked good in the Manly Seagulls colours in reserve grade. Dane Laurie, I think that he could re-sign with the Panthers. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Khalid Rajab from the Bulldogs would be an interesting one, can play in the halves or at fullback. And then Leon Tahal, who is at South Sydney at the moment. I think you got to definitely re-sign him going into the next few years. But some great names there in terms of guys off contract over the next few years. Be interesting to see who South Sydney go for. But look, as we've said, just to recap, for the Dolphins, great signing, great re-signing. He's going to be there over the next few years once he gets into the peak of his powers, and some of the older guys around the club like Jesse Bromwich, Kenny Bromwich, Jared Wallace, a few of the older heads in the forwards retire, and obviously the young guys in Tom Flegler, Jeremy Marshall-King, who I think is 27, 28. They've also got Tom Gilbert to return in the forwards. Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow, Herbie Farnworth, these sort of guys getting to the peak of their powers. They are really building a force. And for them to be in the top 4 in their second year It's so unprecedented and it's absolutely amazing. And full credit to Wayne Bennett, what he's done up there as well. I think they are going in a really positive direction under Christian Wolf. It'll be interesting to see how they go over the next few years, but they are building something very special there. And I'm sure that Christian Wolf is good hands for the club to be left in. As for South Sydney, it'll be interesting to see what direction they go in. If Peter Mamouzelos, his development is fast-tracked, and they obviously have him in there playing for South Sydney at starting hooker if Damien Cook leaves. This is all if Damien Cook leaves. If he resigns and Peter Mamouzelos gets that one more year in the number 14 jersey, then that's fine as well. But yeah, look, I'm hearing, and I'm a South Sydney fan, it's gutted me a little bit that the deal with Damien Cook and the Dragons is done, and we're getting Jack de Belin in return. So yeah, that'd be really interesting to see what happens there. But it does Peter Mamouzelos' development get fast-tracked? He comes in, starts at hooker. Who do they go for? Who do they get off the bench? Do they get some utilities? Zach Wolford, obviously one of the guys we spoke about too, that could play that utility role quite well. Gordon Chen Kum Tong, a South Sydney junior. Zach Docker Clay, a bit of an older head there that can play a number of roles for you in that 14 jersey. Who do they go for? I think the priority for me, number one, would be signing a few more front rowers, and we've spoken about that ad nauseum already as well. So South Sydney with a bit of work to do and a few decisions to make by the time Wayne Bennett walks in the door. As for the Dolphins, they look to be going in a really solid direction, and congratulations to Jeremy Marshall King on re-signing with the club.